Hi, I'm Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this vintage crystal cylinder bracelet. It is going to be using raw and some crystals, and there's actually 3 different portions and ways you can do the bracelet stopping along the way. So make sure you continue on and watch how each element is added. Remember, if you need any materials and you're on the site, it's to the left. If you're on YouTube, it's underneath in the description. Hit that down arrow, show more button, and you can get links to get back to our site. So for your materials, we want to have a 2mm round. I'm using the Potomac Crystal Rounds citrine. You want to have a cylinder, and this is the Potomac Crystal Cylinder. You can see those in bright green here in the sample. Couple 11-0s. I have 2 different colors of 11-0s. You can have one color, up to you. 8-0 and a 15-0 that's going to do those colors. Remember, if you need the exact color listings, go ahead and look below the video in that little link there. You'll see that there, or if you're on our website, go ahead and look to the right. It'll have all the product details. So the first thing I have is a size 10 needle on some gray Dragonthread in size 6. And I have a stop bead at the end of the thread. I don't need to leave any room at the end of the thread because when you're going in and looking at it, you are going to come back through the bracelet. This bracelet, this vintage crystal cylinder bracelet, is based on right angle weave, and we're going to be coming up and down the design 2 times. So you'll have 2 opportunities to put your clasp on for the design. Right now, what we're going to do is start in our right angle weave, which is going to be a combination of our cylinders and our 11s and our 8-0 seed beads. So how are we doing this? We're going in and we're going to pick up a cylinder first. The cylinder is going to be one side of our right angle weave, but this is going to be the left side of our box. The top of our box is going to consist of our 11, 8, 11. We're going to get the right side of the box, which is going to be another one of our cylinders. And then we're going to get the bottom of the box, which is the 11, 8, 11 once again. Once you have that on and the colors look great together, you're going to let that drop down next to that stop bead. Once it's down next to the stop bead, we're going to do our right angle weave and create our first unit. Taking the needle and thread, starting at the stop bead, but not sewing through it, I want you to go back through bead number 1, which is going to be that first cylinder, toward your seed beads that you've added for the top of the box. When you pull this, you're going to notice how this lines up in that right angle weave section. So again, the box is that bead on the left, seed beads to the top, bead on the right, seed beads on the bottom. From here, we're going to go back through the design and add a couple little extra beads here at the top, adding on 3 of our 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to use 2 of our yellow color with one of the gold ones in between. So how are we doing this? We're going to go back through now, sew through the first 11 and the first 8-0 seed bead. That brings us out this top 8-0 seed bead, which is the Toho oxblood, and we're going to add 3 more beads. 1 11, another 11, and another 11 with that yellow, gold, yellow. Again, you do not need to use more than one color, but you can if you want to. You're going to circle around another right angle weave, creating kind of this picot trim, back through the bead that your thread is currently coming out of. So let's take a closer look here. And as we're going in, we are going to have our 8-0 thread coming out, our 3 11s, and then we're pulling the thread closer to the side, and those 3 11s are going to basically hang out there at the top. From here, we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Now going through that other 11, down through the cylinder, and you're going to circle around the right angle unit 2 times total. Going through and coming out, going through the 11 at the bottom, out the 8 at the bottom, and repeating the same design. 11, 11, 11. Go back through that 8, and again back through the 11 after, as well as that cylinder. What this is going to look like is almost like each side has a little tiara on the top with those little points and those little trims. From here, we want to come out this cylinder so we can create our next right angle unit. Go through the top, which is the 11, 8, 11. You might have to do that in sections or pieces. And you want to also sew through and come out right after the cylinder. This same technique now, you can either watch on repeat or you can rewind. This is going to be continued the whole length of the bracelet. So I'll do it one more time here for you, a little bit quicker. 11, 8, 11 goes on the bottom of the next box. I'm already coming out the cylinder, which was the right-hand side of box number 1, is now going to be the left side of box number 2. Add another cylinder and add your 11, 8, 11. Sew back through the cylinder that your thread is currently coming out of. So your thread's coming out the bottom. We're going to sew into the top after we just added bottom, right, top, and pull that down. See, that next block is there. From here, I turn to the side just to make it a little bit easier to sew. And I'm going to sew through the 11 and the 8 right after the cylinder. That's going to bring me down to the bottom. Each different stitch, I'm going to go top, bottom, top, bottom. That's the nature of right angle weave. Add your 3 11s right there. Sew back through that 8. So I'm coming out the 8. I'm going to sew back into the other side through the 11, through the cylinder on the right side. Now we're going to decorate the top of the box. To decorate the top of the box, go through the 11 and the 8, popping your needle out, adding 11, 11, 11, 11, back through, down then past the 8 here, or past the 11 rather, sewing back through so you get a nice combination of thread going through this project. Back down through the cylinder. Once you're through there, I'm going to turn the project. I'm going through the bottom 3 beads now, that 11, 8, 11. And once again then, you want your thread coming out just like all good right angle weave out the right hand side of the box, which means it's exiting through the cylinder. There we have it, and we're just going to continue this as our base for the whole length of the bracelet. Don't be too concerned if your little trim here at the top is not sitting exactly at the top, or if your cylinders can kind of push together a little bit more. As we go in and add our crystals along the sides and then decorate in between our cylinders, it will make it fit and it'll sit really smooth and the cylinders will line up right next to each other. Go ahead and go through, continuing on with the design and adding that first level of your right angle weave with a little trim at the top and the bottom. At this point in the design, I wanted to stop and show you that you can actually create the bracelet just as it is, wearing it on your wrist, not having to continue. You'll also notice as we progress that you have the opportunity to have done some of the steps together at the same time, but then you wouldn't have seen whether or not you like the bracelet as is before we go back and add crystals along the outer edge and cross some crystals in the middle. We're going to add our clasp. Hard to decide between a button and our Potomac clasp using one of our clasps here. And the vote so far is for the button as we live stream on Twitch this video. So I'm going to use the button here, and I have just enough thread to start this. I'll show you how to add extra thread as well. I'm going to pick up 1, 2, and 3 of my 11 OC beads, followed by 1 of my 8 OC beads, followed by 2 11 O's. Go into the button and go up one side of the button. Add 1, 2, 3 C beads, come down the other side of the button, and when you exit the other side of the button here, we're going to go in and repeat that same count. 1, 2. We're going to sew through the 8 O, sharing it as we go down. Right there, bringing the thread through, making sure I don't see any extra thread showing. Give a little tight pull. And then go 1, 2, and 3. We're going to take our thread and needle and go back through the cylinder here. And this is where I'll add my thread if I need to, if it doesn't want to pop out through there. And that gets my button on my bracelet. On the other side, if you want to keep it just like this, you'll see after adding down the sides and getting ready to do the interior here, that you can add the loop on the other side. I'm going to use this opportunity because it is short to add some thread to the design since we still have to go back down through the design. Remember, I always want to reinforce my thread. So if you are not proceeding on, you'll want to stop at this point and go back through the thread in the button one more time. I'm going to go ahead now and show you how to add that thread if you want to add it on. Usually I'll do it at kind of an inconspicuous place. Here is great because we're going to be decorating the interior of our bead. Go ahead and grab more of your thread. I'm going to grab a whole handful there. Burn that off your spool. Grab this thread end, and we are going to tie it around the thread end that's already there, keeping that needle on. Tying the end of the thread onto the thread that's already there. You want to pull that knot down as close as you can to the project. That knot's going to hang out right in the middle there of that cylinder. And this is short. Ideally, you can kind of weave the thread back in, but since it's short, I'm going to take that needle off and tie these two ends together. I'm going to do right over left and then left over right, which occurs by me switching my hands that I'm holding the thread in. Once you have that there, burn down your thread ends. I'm not going to burn them down completely just so I know where they are. And I don't kind of trap them in there and make a knot. Go ahead and take your other end of your thread, flatten it out, add on your needle. If your needle gets bent up a little bit, I'm using the bead tech needles. You can go right in to those bead tech needles, oops, and straighten them out. When you are threading a needle, I just went over this with our photographer Justin, told him I was going to teach him. You want to flatten out the thread and feed the needle onto the thread rather than threading the needle. I like to think it opposite. Go in with your pliers, you can straighten out your needle, and we'll get ready now to decorate the interior of the bracelet as we go back down the design. Our next step, once we are done with this simple roll, and again, I want to show you how simple and easy it looks. We are going to go in now and add in our crisscrosses in the middle. If you like that open center, you can skip this section and then pick back up as we get down to the end with our crystals going down the sides. In the center, what we are going to do is we are going to take our thread and needle and come out through one of our 8/0 seed beads. So our needle and thread are going to be coming out that 8/0, pulling the thread down that course. And when we get to the middle, we're going to pick up a 15, one of our crystals, and a 15. I've cleaned up my 8/0s and my cylinders since we're done with those at the time being. And we're going to sew into the 8/0 on the opposite side of the project. The thread's currently coming down out of that 8/0. And I'm going to sew up through the 8/0 on the opposite side. What that's going to do is put those beads kind of right in the middle there, but you'll see they're not centered. To center them, we're going to add a 15, go back through that same 2mm round bead, making sure as you're doing this that there's not a ton of extra thread showing, so give a little tight pull on your thread, grab another 15, and come back through your 8. At the same time, if your thread and needle wants to go through the 11 afterwards, that is totally fine because we are going to be doing that anyway. Pulling that thread and needle down then, you're going to notice that X sits right between our nice cylinders right in the middle, adding that pop of color. From here, I'm going to sew down the right angle weave through the cylinder. This is my last time through the cylinders. Once we're through the cylinder here, just like we did on the opposite side, because it's right angle weave, it's going to be every other that we go top to bottom, bottom to top. Sew through the 11, sew through the 8, and as we exit the 8, same thing. 15, round, 15, go to the opposite side, sew up towards the top of the 8, coming out that top of the 8, add an additional 15, share that 2mm bead in the middle to get that X effect. And there's a number of different things that you can put in the middle here. If you don't want the crystal bling, you can just put in 3 of your 11/0s. Grab one more 15 and sew down through the next, or sew down through that 8, coming back full round. Make sure before you move on to the next one that it's not looped in between like this one's doing. Your thread, that 15's towards the top of the project, and you're ready to move on to the next step, which is the next set of your right angle weave. So when you lay this down, you can see how that pop of yellow just adds a lot to the center. Again, you can keep it open, you can keep it closed with that X, or you can even do 3 seed beads down the center. There's lots of options to do as you link the interior of those 8/0 seed beads. Once you have the crystals crisscrossed in the center, you can see that it is once again a lovely bracelet that you can stop at this point if you want to. We're going to be adding the loop for our clasp, and remember I used that cup button clasp. You can also use a Potomac clasp, went back and forth with that nice bronze. And I'm going to show you how to do the loop for our button, and then how we're going to continue down the project, adding in more crystals if you so choose. You can obviously stop after this. Going in here, coming out of the last one of our cylinders, I added 3 11-0 seed beads and 1 8-0, mimicking the cup button side, followed by 24 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go back down that 8-0 seed bead. So I have that nice little loop there. From here, 1, 2, 3 more 11s, and back through that last opal. What that's going to do is get your loop there ready to go. I'm going to reinforce this loop even though we're going to come back one more time and do the same thing. Going up through the 3 seed beads, out the 8, out the loop, down through these 3 seed beads, and then we're going to get ready to go down the sides of our project, adding in our crystals. Our final step in this project is going to be to come down the sides, adding in crystals as well. And what that's going to do is just bring some of that yellow color and pop it on the exterior. We're left with our 15s and our crystals, and we need to get our thread and needle to the exterior of the project. We're going to go down one side towards the button, reinforce the button, and then come back the other side and tie off that starter thread. To get to the point where we are ready to add, we are going to jump up the design. So I want you to come through the cylinder. We're going to exit the cylinder, and I want you to add 1 and 2 of your 15-0s. Once you get those 2 15-0s on, go ahead and go into that first 11 that's at the top there, that yellowish color, and you are going to exit then through the 11-0 seed bead in that champagne color. We're going to be going along the top now, catching on to all of these 11-0 seed beads. The 11-0 seed beads are going to act as our connectors as we go down, which is going to force those yellow 11s, it's nice that it's 2 different colors, to kind of lay on their side. From here, you're going to pick up a 15, your crystal round, and a 15. You're going to jump down the project along the side from one gold 11-0 to the next. This is going to tighten up the design just a little bit, and it's very, very simple. We're just going down this outer edge. If you don't want it to be as blingy, you can choose to just do some seed beads and some of your 8-0s on the exterior. So it's up to you, but you can see how simple this is, just going right down the line, sewing in and connecting the 15s with the crystals along the side. So see how that crystal edge is going? We're going to go the whole way down on this one side, come to the end here, reinforce our clasp, come back out and do the top. So continue down the sides, adding in 15 crystal 15 in between those pointed 11s at the top of our 8s. When you get to the end of the row of the crystals, what we're going to do is jump from one side to the other. You can see how pretty just that little bit of yellow on the edge really pops. I want you to pick up after coming out through the 11-0, go down through that brown 11-0, just like we did to start on the opposite side. Grab 2 of your 15s, and we're going to sew through the cylinder. Now, when we sew through the cylinder, rather than going right to the opposite side and down the row, this is our opportunity to reinforce this clasp. So we're going to go back through the seed beads leading up to the clasp, back through the clasp. If you are using a cup button, it's always a great idea as you go through the cup button to go through the beads before and after at the same time. I usually will also do one if I can where I kind of go over the seed beads and hop over so the thread gets hidden underneath just in case that bead, any bead there would crack. Going down on the opposite side, coming down that side as well, reinforcing. Oops, opposite way. Should have been coming down the other 11s. That's the way I came up. Going down these other 11s, popping out through the cylinder, adding in your 2 15s, and continuing down the top, adding in your crystals so they mirror one another till we get to the end and we can tie off the thread after reinforcing our loop, sewing through that loop, down through the other side, through the cylinder, and getting ready to knot off the end. To finish off this vintage crystal cylinder bracelet, we're coming out the last 11, and I go down through the secondary 11, that alternate color, grab 2 of my 15s, skip over that stop bead, which we'll take off in a minute, and sew directly through the cylinder. Now we already have 2 passes through our clasp section. This is going to be our 3rd pass. Once we get that 3rd pass through, going up through and reinforcing, we get to come down the opposite side then. And as we come down the opposite side, that's where we're just going to take off that stop bead and simply knot the 2 ends together like we did when we were adding thread. Because of the color of the thread with this nice gray, and because of the beads that are next to it and what kind of tops it, you are not going to see that little knot that's created and linking the 2 together. If you want to, you can also sew down further into the project to get rid of the knot elsewhere. Coming down here then, these 3 11-0s, I'm going to exit, take off that stop bead. Sometimes easier said than done. Remove that stop bead there. Grab these 2 thread ends and tie the thread ends together, right over left, left over right, twisting or switching your hands. Once I have that, I'm going to keep that thread end there, and since I have room on my thread and needle, I'm going to go back through the cylinder. That's there, and end my thread ends on opposite sides. So my thread end will not be both ends burned down at the same exact spot. One I'm going to burn down now, that takes the knot and kind of puts it in the interior. One I'll burn down on this left side, one I'll burn down on the right. I love using the thread burner for this because it heat seals the thread from fraying and also makes it better that that knot is not going to come apart. You can see that this bracelet has many additions. So if you want to stop at 1, 2, or 3, you can have that beautiful, nice fall design on the bracelet, and it really gives an amazing vintage crystallized look. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this vintage crystal cylinder raw bracelet. Remember, there's lots of different colors of materials that you can pick and make your own. Doing a full bracelet, stopping after the cylinders, adding the extra crystals, and really making it your own. As always, if you haven't yet and you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe so that way you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. We are happy to inspire and look forward to giving you more creations.